Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Monday's Wealth Creation Show. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Good, good. Well, we're just setting up there. Jim's streaming as usual on Instagram and TikTok. I'm here in the studio on all the other platforms and our Facebook and YouTube channels as well. So jump in, guys, comments, and we will go through them as we go if we can. If not, at the end, keep it interactive. Today, we are going to discuss, do we really need to sacrifice everything for success? And I'm going to put a few things to you today, Jim, and you could speak for your experience and what your sacrifices have been. I know you have sacrificed quite a lot over the years, and we'll talk about whether that was worth it and how much sacrifice, what's too far in sacrificing things and what's necessary. I think is important as well.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like when you read that title, do we need to sacrifice everything for success? And my initial response is absolutely. Why would you? I think personally, everybody's got their own price they've got to pay for where they want to be or where they want to get to.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that's going to be. But based on your own personal circumstances and how you're going to get there, you've got to decide whether you want to pay that price or not. That's really what it comes down to. But these are some of the things that we're going to talk about the price that I actually had to pay for that. And you've got it in certain categories and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to jump the gun and talk about it too much. But it'd be interesting to see if most of the people that are successful or moderately successful out there or on their journey of success. Remember, success is a journey. It's not a destination. So an example of that, I would say straight away, is you're immediately successful when you make a decision to actually do something and put yourself out of your comfort zone. That's personally for me. If you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, you're probably instantly successful as a result of that, because you're doing something that you'd otherwise not do before. And by putting yourself out of your comfort zone, you're probably learning, growing in something that you've never done before as well. So for me, that instantly puts you in a successful category. Hopefully that makes sense for most people. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to achieve anything.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Show me somebody that's never failed, and I'll show you somebody that's never succeeded in anything. And remember the old thing about, statues are never erected to critics.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. And it kind of resonates with myself as well, because I feel like everybody is successful, can be successful in their own right, and depending on what they're doing and where they are on their journey. I would consider myself successful at where I am, or relatively successful at where I am at the moment, because of everything that I've learned and chosen to push myself to do over the course of the last few years. But then your success is obviously at a totally different level, but you're at a different stage in your story and things as well. So everybody's different. Would you say it was true, Jim, that the sacrifices for success can't really be measured by the amount of money you have? I think you kind of touched on it anyway, because you're talking about success being what you learn and how you push yourself and things.
Okay, let's talk about money and let's get this out the way.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's a lot of people out there that goes, it's not all about money. But yet money is the thing that we all talk about every single time in day-to-day life. And it's mostly the lack of it. So to sit there for anybody and sit and say, this is not all about money, try doing everything without money then. Because you're not going to get pretty far. You're not going to be able to feed yourself. You're not going to be able to clothe yourself. You're not going to put a roof over your head. You're not going to be able to drive in a car, or you're not going to be able to get petrol or fuel. You're not going to be able to do anything without money. So let's bring it back to saying that, money is a necessity. It's right up there with oxygen.
Yeah. I think what you say quite often, and I think it's very true, is that money is the driver for almost everything. I think when it comes to sacrifices, you do pay in a different way. You pay emotionally and socially, because obviously you need to obviously cut those things back, your social time, and that will affect you emotionally because you're sacrificing a lot. And in order to achieve what you really want in life, you have to make these sacrifices.
Every single person that I've listened to or read their story, including myself, has paid a price in terms of emotionally as well, and socially. there was a lot of years. I don't really socialise with people that much, and I just stopped going out with other people. You know what did it for me? I was told the story. I think it was Jerry Scriven, one of my mentors at the time, who talked from stage at that time, all these years ago, more than 30 years ago. And he talked about the story about when he left his local village to aspire to something else in the big city. And then when he came back, maybe 10 or 15 years later, he literally walked into the same pub and it was exactly the same people doing exactly the same thing. And he thought to himself, God, I've been away for 10 or 15 years and these people have never moved on. They've just done that
Still
for 10
in
or
the
15
same bar
years.
still.
That's pretty frightening.
Yeah,
And the fact that that's all that's ever happened in their lives. Now, I'm not decrying that. Some people are quite happy where they are. They're quite happy to be in their own environment. But if you want more, that's probably why you're listening and tuning into this now, because you want more in life. You want more of the good stuff in life, the things that will make you better, the things that will give you better lifestyle, better quality. And you're going to have to pay a price. You know, if you don't pay that price, wait till you get the bill from regret.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to be the nearly man. You know, the man that nearly did this and the man that nearly did that.
Or I could have been this, or could have been that. Yeah.
Well, I nearly became a financial director of a PLC on the grind to actually be a worldwide, you know, in the newspaper and the media and all the rest of it. And I'll be honest, thank God I never chose that option.
Yeah.
Genuinely, thank God I never chose that option, because I would hate to think what hamster wheel I would be on right now. And literally, if I'd still be here over the probably the numerous heart attacks I've probably had on the way from 40 years old and onward. And I know that because I know people like John Lear, who was head of the Rank organisation at that time. He was again one of our mentors. John talked about that, about how he had several heart attacks in his 40s. My father was the same. You know, he had several heart attacks in his 40s as well. And that resonated with me. And I thought to myself, God, I don't think I'd ever want to be in that position. And I just saw the path that I was following was maybe leading me on to a path of success that most people would look at me and think, wow, you're the financial director of a flipping global PLC. It's like, that is success. And I'm kind of thinking, no, it's no.
but success that comes with a big price. Because
it's a big price. It's like you've sacrificed everything. You'll probably have no family life at all. You'll probably travel the world, and everybody thinks that's really glamorous. But I tell you what, it wears off after a couple of weeks. And I've tried that on a smaller scale when I was a financial controller at one of the companies I worked in the past, and we took over our sister company overseas, and I had to run it as the financial controller there, more or less the financial director. And I tell you what, it was great in the first couple of weeks having to travel over there and sort everything out and having nights out. And I was able to take a lane and we'd have a good time. But then after a while, that honeymoon period just wore off. So, but most people would look at me and think, wow, what a huge success. This guy's traveling the world in a suitcase. But that's literally it. You've left your life behind.
Yeah. I mean, you started to kind of go into some of the things that we're going to talk about today. But the one thing that you spoke about there was when you used the comparison to somebody that the person in the pub that's been there all these years and things. And the big thing for me that jumps out that is change. And that's what a lot of people are scared to do. And it's one of the main things that you need to do in order to excel and succeed and make your life better, is to embrace change. And a lot of people find that difficult. So anyway, let's talk about what things successful people do sacrifice. And like you say, Jim, I've broke it down into certain sections to go through today. And I thought the first one, the best one for me to cover with you, and I think would be is time, really. And you are the self-proclaimed Time Lord. But I think time is a really important one. For me,
I am the self-proclaimed Time Lord. I have announced that I am the Time Lord, the true Time Lord. Never mind Doctor Who, I'm a Time Lord. And how am I a Time Lord? Well, I managed to build a system in order to supply an income to me, which never really relied on my time anymore. Therefore, I bought all my time back and I have all my time to myself, whether, you know, to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I can choose every single day, you know, what I do when I get up in the morning. I can choose if I want to. Now, there is a routine and a regimen I actually follow anyway, and I work in 5 properties as a result, and I run 5 properties as a result as well. But I could choose not to do that and just sit on a beach. You know, I do often think to myself, and I talked to Ian about this morning. There's often times where somebody asks me to do something, and I think, nah, I'd rather be sitting on a beach drinking pina coladas, so I'm not doing it. And I've got that option to do it, because most people would say I have to earn the money, whereas, like, how much more do I need? I don't.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Yeah,
So
we've spoke previously about how you've built obviously a team and the people around you, myself included, and things that helps drive things forward. It took you a long time to do that. See, back in the beginning, when it come to time and things, did you have your own system where you had like to-do lists and things that you stuck to and deadlines and, do you know, things that you were quite regimented in doing in order to maximize the use of your time?
flying by the seat of my pants. Literally, that's how it was. Remember, I worked in industry as a financial controller and financial director. So, and I was a part of the management team. So all my life was consumed with that. But the great thing was I worked in local manufacturing businesses. So everything was easy access and easy distance to get into work. So therefore, I wasn't losing a huge amount of time actually having to travel places. So that was the choice I had. I could either be the high-flying financial director at a PLC eventually, or I can choose to be a financial director at a local manufacturing company. And one has huge status and huge rewards later on, because I probably would have been a part owner in that company at the time. You know, I probably would have got share options as well, which I got in other companies previously. But I just felt that, you know, by the time I had built a big enough portfolio, I thought that's where my future is. My future is about releasing my time to do what I want to do. It's not actually embedding myself into more work. So literally, but the reason I was able to self-manage about 30 properties was because it was literally because I basically flew by the seat of my pants all the way through it. And it was just, you're more or less firefighting as you're doing it, because you're completely consumed. So typical examples of time, you really didn't have any time. You came home from work, and because it was a critical path, in other words, it had to be done in order for the next stage to happen. Because it was a critical path in that avenue, I then had to just put my overalls on, and I used to get in my car, and I used to go out and paint and decorate my own houses. And I used to go and, you know, I used to go and do my own maintenance, my own improvements. So I used to do all these things as well, and I used to clean all my own houses as well, and all my own bathrooms, my kitchens, and everything. Because remember, you know, when I first started, I was a cleaner. I was a window cleaner and an industrial cleaner with my father. So I had a bit of savvy in that, and I just felt that at that time that there was no one else to do it, and I had no team, and buy-to-let wasn't really that prominent at that avenue, and nobody really wanted to clean houses. There was no such thing as anybody wanted to do house clearances and stuff like that. 30 years ago, it was most people really cleaned offices and they cleaned premises, but they never actually cleaned buy-to-let properties. Because there was no market for that at that point in time. So I just really had to do things myself. Or maybe I just thought that was what was expected of me. So I just constantly went out and did that. In the thought process that by doing it myself, and here we go, spending my time, because you're spending your time, remember, I was actually saving money. But in actual fact, I was losing money on an opportunity cost basis. It was the fact that the time that I was involved in doing that, I probably could have been buying more houses and negotiating better deals and making thousands of pounds more when I was actually trying to save literally probably £10 an hour. So I'm trying to save £10 an hour, and I'm working an hour to save £10, when in actual fact, in an hour's time, I could have probably looked up another property, made an offer, and bought another property and added a value, and actually had infinite return on that by actually adding the value, then remortgaging it and getting all the money back out, and then doing it again and recycling the cash. But there was no one to follow in that model, but that's the model I had devised at that point in time in order to do this. Now, it's quite a common thing now, and everybody go, but that's normal. That's what we do. It's like, no, but that never existed 30 years ago. There was no such thing as that. So it was the model I actually built at that time to follow. but I didn't. I thought, because that's the mental and the mind, the mindset I was in. I thought about I'll save £10, I'll save £20, but I could have been doing something bigger with that time, because that's when you've got scarce resources in something, you've got to make sure you maximize that time as much as possible, whatever that resource is. So whatever that scarce, so if you've got scarce resources, a classic example is money. Therefore, you should invest your money in the maximum return. You shouldn't just put it in a bank. See how that happens. People do that. It's like, oh, you could make 8% and you could have a secure investment. With me, if I refurbish my property, that's no me, by the way. I don't do that. But instead, I tell you what, just stick it in the bank. You'll get 0.5%, if that. You maybe get 1% or 3% if you keep it for 6 months now. But sometimes these 3% and 5% deals are like, well, it's only up to the first £1,000 that you're getting 5%. But you're only getting like 2%. So it's you've got to look at your scarce resources, and the time was one of the scarce resources I had. So I actually started to make things more efficient. I spoke to somebody the other day about it as well. How in the very beginning, I then used to fax, because Fife Council at that time wouldn't accept any documentation on an email. They just wouldn't accept that. That wasn't allowed. And now that seems completely bizarre, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
But they would accept it on a fax. So facsimiles was legal at that time. An email wasn't. There was no such thing as being legal, an email, because it was so easy to replicate or hack somebody's account.
Yeah.
There was no security in emails. So that's why they wouldn't accept it, but they would accept a fax. So I was able to type up on a Word document the letters required, and I had the templates all the time in order to change the name and change the rent and change the circumstances, and then fire it on a fax card off my desktop on the old dial-up communication. So I literally had to take my phone out and put my dial-up in, and actually then go and when it goes through the whole process of connecting to a phone line for the first time. And that's how I sent things to Fife Council. I sent them on faxes straight from my desktop. So it was another way of making things more efficient. Because if I'm running 30 properties and people are changing over in tenancies and stuff like that, I have to notify the council for council tax reasons. Therefore, it was a quick way of me doing it rather than have to handwrite and print a letter and put a stamp on it and put it in the post. See the time involved in doing that. Imagine doing that 30 times. The time that you're wasting when you can just fax it straight off your desktop. So it was all these things that I had to work out and the processes that I did all the time that I thought, this is how I'm going to claim back a lot of my time and make me more efficient.
Yeah.
So from the point of view, I worked in manufacturing in efficiencies and processes and efficiencies and systems, because this was a natural progression for me to be able to make what I'm doing more efficient as well, just to get it turned around. I was able to send faxes in the middle of the night as well at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'd often be up to 1 o'clock in the morning sending faxes to the council.
And that is really looking at the best way to streamline things and putting strategies in place and making decisions that are going to make the best use of time. Did you ever feel, I mean, I know, well, I'm going to say I know you don't, but I'll see what your answer is going to be before I answer it for you. But did you ever procrastinate quite a lot about making decisions, or were you quite like, I know maybe there's a fine line between procrastinating and making sure the decision's right before you do it, or putting something in place, but procrastination can be something that holds somebody back because they do it on everything and it just wastes so much time.
No, I didn't have time. No. I didn't have time to procrastinate.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, honestly, time was so valuable. It's like you just had to do it. Yeah. And this is why most people, the saying goes, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Because they won't do it tomorrow, they'll do it now. And often I'll sit at meetings and somebody will say, right, that's on your agenda or your list to do, Jim. And by the time I get to the end of the meeting, I says, I've done it. I've sent you. It's like, how did you do that? I just did it from my phone. I just got it now and just did it. It's done.
Yeah.
So because I know if I don't get it done now, I'll not be able to fit it in later on. Or I'll have to fit it in later on, and that takes up more time. So when I can do things right there and then, I do it. I don't say, oh, I'll schedule that and I'll get that done tomorrow. No, I could do it now. Just get it done now. So that's how I managed to save all my time and make myself more efficient in that process in order to get my time back. But I do regret, one of the things I do regret is probably doing some of the labour and stuff, which actually was just stupid. at that point in time, because it takes a huge toll. Could you imagine working constantly for 20 years with no sleep? It's practically impossible.
No.
But literally, my sleep patterns were so sporadic and so out of kilter with normal sleep patterns. I still don't do that today. It's extremely difficult for me to sleep normal.
Well,
Whereas the point, I would just fall asleep on one of the floors in one of the properties, and maybe at 12 o'clock at night, and I'd maybe wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then finish off the property, come back to my house, get washed and changed, put my suit on, and then go to work as a financial controller.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd do that every single day, and I would do it at the weekend.
Yeah, sleep's on my list of things to go through with you, because I know that's something that everybody has to sacrifice to be successful as well, and I know it's a big part of your story as well.
Yes, there was to-do lists. I put a lot of. I just did quick notes every now and again. I kept a wee notepad, a bit of paper, and a pen, and I just wrote down things I needed to do. So it's out of your head. The most important thing, I see it every time where people go, "Oh, I'll remember that." You know when you see it quite a lot? Restaurants. And I know fine the order's not going to come as I've just said it. Because the person sits there like, Jack the lad, it's funny, it's always guys. Jack the lad is like, I don't need to take anything down. I'll remember your order in full. And I'm thinking, you don't know me and you don't know what I'm about to order, but I tell you what, you're not going to come and present the right thing to me if you don't take it down. But I'll leave them on devices, I'll leave them to do it, because I'm like, no, I didn't go, look, you better probably get a bit of pen and paper and take it down. So I'll let them do it. But 9 times out of 10, they don't come out with the right order.
Yeah.
And that's a waste of time. Write it down. There's a great lesson there. It's, for God's sake, no matter how much you think you'll remember, write it down. Because I'll guarantee you, sometimes when you're saying, "Oh, I'll remember that," and you don't write it down, somebody rings your phone, you answer it, you go into a totally different subject, and by the time you come off the phone, you've forgotten to write that down.
Yeah.
And when somebody says, "Did you get that done?" Oh, was I meant to do it? Eh? Was I?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Well, we said it. You agreed. It's minuted in the documents, in the minutes.
I'm sure that'll sound all too familiar to a lot of people. And I think it's important, if you want to stop wasting time, and it's important to really start taking action and do what truly matters in order to make the best use of your time. And you just made that quite clear there when you've been breaking down how you approached the whole purpose of time in your journey.
Yeah.
But then the next thing I was going to ask you about is like, and you have touched on it already, and it's quite hard not to, obviously, because it's all part of the journey, but family and social life is a big thing that a lot of people will sacrifice, and people might think, well, you shouldn't be sacrificing that. I mean, was there times that you sacrificed with your wife, with children? And
here's the great one. And I remember, again, I'll come back to my mentors at the time. It's the old thing about, I've got to be there for every single birthday. I've got to be there. You know, it's like your kid's 1 year old. They're not going to remember any birthday.
Yeah.
They're not going to remember anything. And probably, I think, in the years to come, here's the classic. It's like in the years to come, when they come at you and say, I'm getting married or I'm going to university, can you help me financially? And you go, well, actually, I didn't actually put any effort into actually earning any more money or doing any side hustles. But I turned up to your birthdays, because that's the only place you're going to get the extra time. It's going to be the, you can't, one of the things I was a non-negotiable on was school sports days. Because I felt that myself, my father didn't turn up for most of my things. No, when I was at award ceremonies, my father didn't turn up because he's working. When I was at school sports days, father didn't turn up because he was still working. When we went on holiday, my father took his books and he had to work because he had a job. He was self-employed, but he really had a job. He never had a business. He just worked, and it was him. It all relied on him. If he wasn't there, it wouldn't happen. So he had a job, more or less. So I felt that was something that I probably I regretted not having. Was my dad there just to cheer me on, I suppose, or just say, that's fantastic, or whatever it was. So it was non-negotiable for me about, school sports days and stuff. But things like birthdays and anniversaries and all these different things, it's like, for God's sake, these are all the things that nobody's going to remember in 20 years' time. They're not going to say, but I tell you what, they'll remember in 20 years' time when you go, oh, by the way, see, you had that problem. I could pay for you to go private healthcare now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to wait on the NHS doing that. These are the sort of things that I had in my mind about, I'm going to build a huge empire, to the fact that I'm going to generate so much money and so much wealth that if anything needed done, you would need to rely on this current system, the existing system, in order to sort that. And that was even not just for me, but that was for all my family and my extended family as well. And the fact that I could be able to do that. So these are all the things that drove me to keep doing things like that. You know, what's more important, attending a conference that is held by some of the most successful people in the world for a weekend, and it's never going to be repeated?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it your kid's 1-year-old birthday?
Yeah, I think you're right in saying, like, more poignant points in life, like you say, helping them go to study further education, maybe getting married, and do you know, or buying their first house. Being able to help them do that is a lot more important than, like you say, maybe the first birthday that they're never going to have any
It
memory
teaches
of.
valuable lessons as well, Richard. It teaches valuable lessons as well. That your children see you as the person that's out there forging the path forward and creating the wealth and the opportunities for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of impression do you then leave on them about what they're expected to do?
Yeah, I think,
Rather than actually being down the pubs playing darts.
yeah,
You know, I come back to saying it's the story I always remember in my head of the, you know, the fictitious, but I tell you what, it's true though. It does happen where all these guys, let's just put it on guys, because it's mostly dads and all the rest of it. That's the thing that I saw. All
mm-hmm.
these people that go out there and they're at the pub every single week and every single weekend, probably every single night. They're playing pool and they're winning competitions and they're winning darts and everything. They're bringing all their trophies home and it's all on these shelves and they're showing them all fantastic in the back. This is not going to be anything nice, by the way. So you're in for a rough ride if you're listening and watching this. But take it on the chin, like I did. This is what I used to get told. It's like, you know, all these trophies on their shelves and everything like that at home. And it's like, look, my kids will be looking up to me because all these trophies. But what's going to happen when it comes for the day? Again, as I said, your children come to you and say, I want to go to university. I want to travel overseas. I want to, you know, I probably need a car as well. I possibly need to rent a house. I possibly need to buy a house. It's like, you know, well, I'm sorry, but I really didn't spend any time developing any wealth for your future. But come and have a look at my snooker trophies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, that's just a story I never wanted to happen. That's just something I never want to be ever in a position to have to say. It's like I spent my whole life, you know, for effectively pissing it up against the wall. You know, for me, just me, selfish me. I'm the one that had the children. I'm responsible for them. I'm their father. I'm the one that should be creating some wealth and showing the way forward and forging the way forward and showing them what they should be doing. Hey, you can still enjoy yourself. You can still have a great life. You can still have that. You can still have a balance.
I was just about to say that. It's not about neglecting your loved ones. Far from it. I think it's about working around your personal life. Like you say, Jim, you weren't there for every birthday, but you were there at their sports days because that's what you felt was maybe important, because it's supporting them in achievements, basically. So it's finding that balance, and like you say, you making those slight sacrifices was allowing you to be more successful, and thus helping them.
This medicine you're about to take, Richard, okay, will be another step towards your long-term wealth for you, your family, and your friends.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I've got a night out with my pals.
Well, that's the next thing I'm just going to say to you, because, I mean, there are times where, I mean, there will be times that you've postponed or cancelled things with friends and social things that you think, well, I could be doing this and excelling in my personal, my professional life rather than spending time down the pub, basically. And I bet there's a lot.
You can't lead on what we call a normal life like everybody else leads if you want to be in that 5% group. It's not possible to do that. It's bullshit if you think you can do that.
Yeah.
It's crap if you think you could do work-life balance. It's just not possible. You have got to make some sort of sacrifices. It's the old thing about what John Paul Getty said. You know, in order to be wealthy and successful today, you've got to observe the masses and do the opposite.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
don't follow the crowd. You're the sum. Dan Pena talks about this. Dan Pena's rough, I'll tell you what. But he talks about it and he says, you're the sum of the 5 people that you hold closest to yourself right now. Have a look at them and what their lifestyle is and how they are. If that's what you want, then keep listening to them. Keep associating with them. But if that's not what you want, then you probably shouldn't be associating with them.
Yeah.
On a business level, because it rubs off. It's the old thing about, you know, my mother used to say, and everybody's mum used to say, is don't go about with these people because it'll rub off on you.
Yeah.
It does, and it's true in older age. It's true when you're an adult, when you leave school, even when you're at school. You know, look at my school. Jeez, it's like I just went about with the wrong people at school, and that was it.
I was at the same school, and yeah.
Needless to say, that's how I ended up getting asked to leave, and you know that's how I ended up taking. You know, they ended up taking the deputy captaincy away from me for Lundy, the house. So I was deputy captain for London, and I got it taken off me.
I was in London as well. I never knew that.
Yeah. So, well, I was deputy captain for a short period of time.
We were at the same school, but it was very different as well.
And then combined with things like truant and getting into trouble all the time, even when we were in 5th year, it was like, nah, you can't, you don't deserve this title, and quite rightly so. But that's where you were, and at that time, I never paid a price. I never knew anything about what I knew now.
No, I think, but when it comes to social and friends and things, if you don't learn to say no, or give maybe a night out with friends a skip and put that extra work in or study extra,
you could do it.
You're the one that's ultimately going to suffer for it.
Here's classics of how I used to do things. So when I was studying for my accountancy exams, Elaine and I would go out for a night and we'd probably go to the bingo. Because the bingo was what she liked. She liked going to the bingo. She took her mum, she took her auntie as well. We all went to the bingo. So we sat on a table of 4. So when it came to half time at the bingo, what they would do is they would go off and do their own things and enjoy themselves and have a great time. I would open my study books and I would start studying on the bingo table while it was half time. And I would literally do my exams and all my questions and study. And then I would close my books when we're ready to start again. And then I'll start again. That's the type of thing I did because I saw the marginal gains in that.
And making use of that time.
Yeah. Because if you were doing that maybe 26 times a year, which is every other week, in any shape or form, it didn't need to be the bingo every single week or something like that. But if you were doing that all the time, you've got an hour of, half an hour or 45 minutes of studying you can get in every single time. Now, over 26 times, that's 0.75 times 26. That's another 20 hours. So you've got another 20 hours of studying. A ScotVic module is 40 hours of studying. So literally, just by utilising that time in between the bingo or the social night out where I studied, I literally almost got half a ScotVic module for qualification in terms of learning. That's a great way to be productive in terms of what you're doing. And I still do that today. There's loads and loads of opportunities to be very productive in doing what you're doing. You know, when I get up in the morning, I managed to fit in listening to a Diary of a CEO at the same time as reading a book, at the same time as sometimes doing a bit of training. And it's like, this is all the normal. This is the same time that anybody else uses to get ready. And I'm getting ready at the same time as doing it.
Yeah.
How is that possible? And it's just habit stacking it. You do that. So family and social life, yes. Christmas was a classic. One year I started as a financial controller at VZS Technical Ceramics and part of Beaufort Group. I started as a financial controller. I was brought in to help them in the management team. As part of the management team, there was 5 of us in the management team: production manager, the operations manager. We had the sales director, the managing director, and we had myself, who was effectively the financial director. So we were a nice, close-knit team. But the problem was they hadn't got any budgets done. So literally, I had to start on my birthday, which was the 5th of December, and I had to put together the budgets. I had never put together a budget in my life, by the way. And I had just got an offer of double my salary in a company car.
So you had to put that extra time in.
So I had to work on, I remember working on Christmas Day. I remember doing work on Christmas Day to put the budgets together in order for when we were coming back from the Christmas holidays, we would hit the ground running New Year, and nobody would know any different about the fact that I had no idea what I was doing. I literally had my books out going, how do I put together a budget and forecasting? Yeah. But I knew where to find out the information. That's the key.
And you put that extra time and effort in.
Yeah. So I put the extra time and effort, so nobody would ever know the difference. And they never ever did. Because I learned straight away because I had that window of opportunity to do it. So I literally spent the whole of the Christmas and New Year holidays doing that. As well as, when I was at Tillis Russell, we had to go in and work at Christmas to do the stock takes. It was expected. You were an accountant. That was the only time you could do stock take in the mill.
Yeah.
So that's when you would do it. So you just worked. That's it. That's normal for you as an accountant. And so these are all things that I became what we call temporarily ambitious to become permanently lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, which is I like that, and I really think that the thought process in that is ideal for any kind of person that wants to be successful.
Here's a really good one when we talk about because there's no in here, but family and social life. So what we did was we used to I think it was Tony, was our mum, Elaine's mum used to look after Tony. And then we used to drive all the way down to the NEC and the NIA because we were having functions there. There was about 30,000 people in our organisation at the time in network marketing. We were having functions there, but we would literally drive down in our civvies and would stop in a lay-by and would get changed into our suit clothes before we went to the function. Literally in front of all the traffic. We'd just get changed. We'd just take our trousers off and everything and put our suit on and put our tie on and our shirt on and everything would be, just in front of everybody. Or we'd drive up a field or something like that and just to get it done. Because that's the only window opportunity you had to put your suit on other than anything else. So that's the type of commitment and the sacrifices you make, and you just get on with it. Because Tony was literally less than 5 years old. She's not going to remember the fact that we were hanging about. It's like, that'll not make any difference. It's like they're 5 years old. It's like, where do people get this impression that you've got to be around them all the time and you've got to be there for every birthday? You've got to set an example for them. You've got to set an example about how the world is. It's not all sweetness and roses. No. When they go outside that door, more or less everybody doesn't like them, and they're in competition against everybody. When they come inside this house, everybody loves them. But when you get out there, Tony, it ain't like that.
Yeah, you need to teach the people that the world isn't always fair, and it's not, like you say, it's not always.
It's never fair. You've just got to play the hand you're dealt and accept it. Acceptance is a real big thing. You're going to have to pay a price, and the price is often family commitments, social commitments, lifestyle. In the early days, remember, I'm putting all this in now in order to be free later on to do what I want to do. How many people can stop work right now? I could have stopped work at 38 and I did. So I could have stopped work and never worked for the rest of my life and still had an income coming in regardless and still be wealthy. But I chose not to do that.
Yeah.
But how many people work till 65? Well, I'll tell you, more or less everybody. And the majority of these people can no longer afford to retire. And they can no longer afford to go on the holidays they always wanted to go on. They can no longer afford the cars they wanted. They can no longer afford to live in the house they wanted. They can no longer afford to heat the house that they're in. They can no longer afford to feed themselves properly, all because they didn't pay the price when they were younger.
Yeah. Going back to, you say about the early years of things, Jim, the next thing that's on the list is sleep. And I know that, were there nights back then that you felt like you really, and now as well, that you feel like you really push yourself?
I sometimes got to the stage where I actually didn't know where I was at some point in time, delirious.
Sleep deprivation.
Because I didn't sleep enough. I just had stayed so much awake. There was sometimes I actually stayed for a week for 3 days with no sleep at all.
The next, you'll see my questions because I've given you copies of what I'm going to ask you. So
there's sometimes I stayed awake for about 3 days, but then I told you the story initially about, how I used to get up at 4. When I started in a staging, I used to literally wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd go on a recce drive, and I would actually go and look in the estate agent's windows of my competitors. And I'd actually be able to see what was on their desk and what they were dealing with right now, because they used to leave that all lying out. And that's how clinical and analytical I got about the whole thing. You know, and the fact that if I'm going to compete against everybody, I need to know everything I know about them in order to be able to actually get one up on them. That's how I thought at the time. So that's the type of thing I did. But also the buy-to-let properties, it was, as I said, I worked till sometimes you couldn't put a Hoover on at 11 o'clock at night, could you? So I often had to go around and just actually use a dustpan and brush. And one of these, you know, roller Hoovers that used to get, which were hand held, it just took up the dust and the grime and that, because the tenant was moving in the next day, and it's the only way I could have got it done, and there was nobody else available to do it. So I just had to do it myself. And then I had to sometimes fit the carpet there and then as well in the middle of the night. So it was often quite challenging to get a carpet fitted. So I used to use double-sided tape on the edge and all the way around, instead of actually using tacks, because it was the middle of the night. You know, you're not going to wake anybody. You're going to wake people up. So you're going to have to be very, very quiet. So I used to fit my own carpets as well, in terms of doing that. So I used to fit my own carpets. I used to fit my own laminate. I used to fit my own kitchens. I used to fit my own bathrooms and that. There was some things I wouldn't do. I used to do general electrical stuff. That was quite easy to do because I knew all that. Reader's Digest was absolutely brilliant for that, which is now YouTube effectively. Reader's Digest book, I had a huge book, how to do with DIY, and it had everything in it. How to tile, how to do plumbing, how to fit taps, how to, you know, fit a toilet, how to do, you know, minor electrics, like put another socket on, how to put a pendant light up. All these things I used to follow religiously, back to back, cover to cover. And I used to learn all these different trades and how to do things. So it's great. But then I grew up learning about cars, because we had cars when we were younger, and you just had to fix them up all the time. So you began to learn all that. So I was a great student at that time of learning how to do things, so I could actually do them off the cuff, and I could do them myself when I needed to. So lack of sleep was definitely a thing. And being delirious now and again was definitely a thing. I used to get tunnel vision, you know, with lack of sleep. I just used to, and then often I used to get, obviously, the violent headaches and all the rest of it, and migraines and stuff. I just used to work through it. And sometimes when I was extremely ill, I still went out and worked on the houses, because I knew no one else would be doing it. No one else would do what I'm doing. And in order to be successful, I've got to do something else that no one else is prepared to do.
So you're putting in all this extra time and obviously sacrificing your sleep. I mean, so did you make up for your sleep later, or did you do like the power nap thing and did that work? Like the power nap?
The thing about, you know, falling asleep at some of the floors of the properties, yeah, absolutely. I just had to lie down. I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And then I've got to give 110% in my work, because there's no way I'm getting somebody to tell me that I'm no pulling my weight at work, especially if I'm a manager of the team. So I then had to buy out the park every single day when I went to my work as well. So I had to make sure I was match fit on every single occasion. But I tell you what, it's the old analogy about take time out to sharpen your axe, and I never did. My axe was completely blunt. There was no blooming axe left.
Do you feel like that caught up with you eventually?
Yeah, well, it's caught up with me, and it's always caught up with me. But as I said before, if you're not willing to pay that price, then you're never going to get what you really want, and that's what kept me driven all the time. That's what kept me to do it every time. I just felt like I didn't really want to do it. I felt compelled to do it. Often people thought, it's just like, how on earth do you keep that sustained? How on earth do you keep that going? It's like, because you're the chief executive of the, you know, Fife Landlords Association, so you're holding landlords meetings as well. You're voluntary consulting with the council, and you're having meetings with the council. You're voluntarily consulting with the rent assessor. You're having meetings with him as well. So you're doing all these different things, as well as running a landlord's list, as well as having your family, as well as having your full-time job, as well as being in charge of, you know, a big team of people in an industry, and responsibilities as well. So, you know, how is that, as well as being more or less the social worker and everything it is to my tenants, you know, and now there's about 10 people that do that similar job, but I was doing it all myself in the beginning.
Yeah.
And literally it was all time.
You're obviously going through everything there, and that's a hell of a lot of commitment and time that you are obviously offering from just yourself. And I think sometimes, no matter how productive you are through the day, you need those extra hours at night in order to excel in what you're doing.
Yeah, now I know that.
Yeah.
Now I know that. But at that time, there was no model to follow. There was no person to follow. There was no example to follow, because no one else was involved in buy-to-let as heavily as me, and buying as much as me, and building wealth as much as me in the buy-to-let property business. I mean, the people like Simon Zushin hadn't arrived yet.
Yeah.
You know, none of these training systems had arrived. You know, the PIN Investors Network hadn't arrived. There was nothing. So that's why I ended up forming Fife Landlord Association in December 1999. We actually met at the London Links Hotel in our first meeting, and I got 20 landlords, big landlords. I mean, I'm talking about Summers, and I'm talking about other people as well that I knew of. And I says, look, we need to get together. We need to form sort of association, because we're getting bullied and picked on by the council. Huh? Does that sound familiar today, by the government? Yeah. We're getting bullied and picked on by the council, and we need to take a stand, and I need you with me in order to take that stand. Because if we get together, we'll be bigger. We'll be the second biggest landlord in Fife as an association. And that's clout.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it, to protect myself more than anything. And that's why we've got Sal today as well, because that was the same time. You know, John and I started at the same time. He started it with the Edinburgh Landlords Association. Stephen Peasnell was involved in forming Sal, was the Moray Landlord Association. So they were all different landlord associations. We all knew each other, and we all formed together.
Yeah. So you've put a lot extra in, but then obviously the rewarding feeling from what you've accomplished then maybe makes that reduced amount of sleep and extra time that you put in worth it.
I never had any idea what I'd accomplished, Richard. Genuinely, when I left Macintosh and it was worth 1.2 million, I was like, when I only calculated it 2 or 3 months ago, remember? At that time, I still had no idea up to 2 or 3 months ago I was actually worth 1.2 million. That wasn't 1.2 million a property. That was 1.2 million in net worth, and earning 6 times of what I earned at Macintosh. That's mental. And it's a part-time.
You still sometimes wonder, how did I do that?
Well, I know how I did it. It was blood, sweat, and tears. And it was sheer grit and determination. And it was pull myself, whether I liked it or no. It was literally just dragging myself on the floor to do one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. It's like that Private Dawes and what is it, Heartbreak Ridge or something like that? Hacksaw Ridge. So, you know, Private Dawes, where he goes, just one more, and take another person down to save their life. And literally that was it. Just one more. I just need to do one more. I just need to do one more. I just need to buy one more property. I just need to invest in one more property. I just need another property. And every single time it's just another property, another property, another property. And I just kept doing that. And I just kept following that simple model I devised at that time in order to get where I was. And that required all that effort to go in to do that.
Well, that kind of brings me nicely on to the next point, the next sacrifice, and that's your health. And you obviously say about what you've just said there about just one more property, one more thing. Do you know what I mean? Would you say in the past, while you've been so determined to achieve your goals and progress, that you've maybe neglected your body, your mind, and just your general health, obviously?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions coming on TikTok, so we'll answer them at the end. So hang on till the end. We will answer them, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
Okay. So how did it affect my health? I would say it brought me to my knees, to the point of destruction. But I was prepared to pay that price. It was Monte Carlo or bust. It was everything. Everything. I would rather die trying.
Right. Okay.
And literally, I've still got that same rhetoric today. I'd literally rather die trying. You know where I saw that before was Duffus at Knockhill. So Alan Duffus, and I think it was another Duffus. It was his rider on the bike. So just call him Alan again. And there's called Duffus. There's Duffus Dip at Knockhill. But Alan would rather die on his motorbike than get beat. So he would rather come off and crash than actually be second. So he would rather die trying. Yeah, he'd rather die trying.
Die trying, basically.
He'd risk his life every single time. And genuinely, that's the type of drive and determination I had. I was prepared to die for my dream, because I never ever wanted to get to my deathbed and think, I wish I had.
Paying the bill for regret.
Imagine the regret knowing that you know what you know now, and actually reconciling yourself with the fact that you came up short. You actually came up short in what you could have really achieved.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sit well with me at all.
No.
That takes a difficult choice to reconcile with that. So it does take its toll, and you know yourself. There's been a couple of times where I've actually gone to the wall, to the point that I was actually prepared to kill myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and
it was nothing to do with money. No. It was just the fact that I am stuck. I am on this hamster wheel, and I need to get off. And so I completely understand people in that frame of mind. It's like, and the only way out of that is just actually, I need it switched off. I need it. It's too much for me. It's overwhelming. But Richard, this is the key here. I notice that other people have got to that stage before. So I was fully reconciled to the fact that this is all part of success. And I just have to, without that, there can be no victory. A diamond, a carbon has to go through. So when a wood decays on a tree, the carbon has to go through extreme pressure in order to come out of the diamond at the end, or it'll never be a diamond. So if you want to be a diamond, you have to go through extreme pressure in order to do that. If you want to be successful, you probably have to go through extreme pressure to do that. But often what you find is the person that stops short at 99 meters. I talked about this on one of the podcasts, and you can see one of the blogs with the Property Video Solutions guys, Chris and Matt. But I talked about this. Often the 100 meters, people stop at the 99 meters and actually don't cross the line. And it's only one more meter, but they're not prepared to pay that price to get there. I was prepared to pay that price for everything, and it wasn't for me. I was prepared to pay that price for my family, for what my obligations were as a father, to make sure, because I knew in years to come, I know, Richard, my children will not, well, they will have pensions now, but they would never have had pensions. I knew that at the time. Pensions would not exist. The healthcare system would be in collapse. The economy would be in collapse more than likely. They would be taxed a lot more. Therefore, they would have to have something in order to protect them. And this is what drove me to do what I do. Now, whether that works out or no is an entirely different story. But it's my obligation to do that, and I just felt that necessary as their dad. That's me. That's what dads should do.
Yeah, that's always been your driver. Your main driver is your kids and then your family.
That's what for me. That's what a father is. That's what they do. That's what my father did for me. I could understand now why he spent all that time at his work to provide for the living that we had.
Yeah,
there's no many window cleaners that effectively had no debt. I mean, I remember somebody really successful at the golf club turning around to my dad one day and talked about debt and mortgages, and they turned around to my dad and went, "Yeah, but you'll understand that, Jim, won't you?" And my dad goes, "No, I've got no debt at all. My house is all my own on the links. I've completely paid off, and everything I own is debt free." And their face just dropped to the ground as if to say that, wait a minute, you're a window cleaner and you're completely debt free with all that wealth, and yet I'm still working as a really professed, a respected person in society, and I've not got two halfpennies stood up together. That was the day. I've actually got a photograph of it, and it sits on my mum's mantle, where the guy just walked out the room to the toilet, and I just burst out laughing with my dad, and somebody took a photo right at that time, where it was just comical. But at that time, I was getting taught by my mentors as well, so I understood completely how that guy was broke at a different level.
Yeah,
but my father was actually wealthy, and yet he was a window cleaner.
Because he made the sacrifices and put the extra time and effort in. Yeah,
that's it. Super wealthy.
Yeah. In terms of just doubling back to your health, and you did you've already covered. I was going to ask about obviously putting yourself through emotional and mental health at risk and things, but you've already touched on that. What about your actual physical health? Because if you spend so much time, I mean, you're relatively active, and people will know who follow you.
No, Richard. But at that time, I know I drank a hell of a lot. And like most people, and let's be honest with yourself, guys and girls. Let's be honest with ourselves. I was self-medicating with alcohol. That's what I did. That's what people do when they live for the weekend. They've had such a stressful week, and they think the weekend is time to let loose and actually drink as much as possible and get absolutely rat-arsed till Monday's over and back to work. And that's kind of the way I was doing things. It was just that was almost like a release. But what you find is that makes it worse.
Yeah,
That compounds depression. You know, it makes it even worse when you wake up the next day and you just can't do it. So there was I was a couple of stone overweight, I would say, than I am now. I was 14 stone, so now I'm 12. And that's okay. I'm comfortable with that because I'm healthy. I'm a healthy 12. So I was overweight. I was extremely stressed all the time. I really didn't have time for anybody. I was just overwhelmed with everything. And it was just compounding and coming, imploding in on me. There was, and that's with the hamster wheel is like, I'm not going to be able to get off this. I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life to keep our lifestyle going. I really got into that rhetoric at one point in time, as thought, in order to keep our lifestyle going. We didn't have a lifestyle, by the way. It's like, in order to keep this lifestyle going, I'm going to have to keep earning for the rest of my life. And we're not actually taking account of where I was right now and the fact that you could have walked away anytime you wanted. You'd have over $1 million if you cashed it all in now. Why would you need to? And nobody's got that, Why would you? But I never ever took stock in any of that. Yeah. I just felt so entrenched. I was in the trenches, and I felt so, blinkered in the fact that this is where I am. I can't see anything else outside of here. That's the path I was leading on, the path of destruction, and it was self-destructive.
Yeah, do you know, you mentioned about, like, you say about weekends here and people living for the weekend, and I feel that weekends fall in the same category as like holidays, like Christmas and birthdays, and they're just all these things that have been socially ingrained in people to like, this is the way it should be, and it's well, should it really?
Observe the masses and do the opposite.
Yes. That's for me. That's how I look at the weekend and holidays and things. I mean, it's not to say don't spend these times to enjoying time with family and all the rest of it, but it's just get out of that routine that everybody else is in.
Richard, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to make some sacrifices.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these are the sort of times you're going to have to make a sacrifice, because it's maybe important that you have to actually learn something at that point in time, or you have to plug yourself into somebody's seminar at that point in time, because that's the only time they can do it.
Yeah.
You have to make that. It's like, if you've got to travel to a real estate conference and you've got to take time out of your work, there's loads of conferences. I mean, I signed up to Tony Robbins' Business Mastery course, and it was 4 courses around the world, right? And I ended up having to say to Tony Robbins, it's like, I can't make it. I literally can't make it, because I've not got the time to get away, because I have to keep on this hamster wheel and keep having to work in order to keep this money going, in order to keep this business going. That's what it was like for me when I first started out in Century 21. I wasn't able to leave because it was reliant on me completely. So if I left, basically nothing would get done and no money would be made. So I literally had to knock that back, even though the first course was over in St Andrews for Business Mastery. I actually said I can't make it for a day.
A day in St Andrews.
Yeah. And I had paid £9,000 for that course. But I also had to pay at that time. I had to pay courses. I had to pay for flights to get to Miami, because the next one was Miami. The next one was in Australia. The next one was in Japan or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the courses. Now, it's great for people that want to do that, but I just didn't have the time to do that at that time. So I actually said, I'm sorry, I can't make it. And I was prepared to lose £9,000. And Tony Robbins' organization actually just gave me it back.
Wow.
They just paid me it back. I didn't expect it. They just paid me back into my account. And that's the one thing I'll always remember about them.
Yeah.
That was the only organisation that ever did that, by the way.
Because you wouldn't expect anyone, like any kind of organisation like that, to just freely say, here's it back.
Yeah, no, just says, give it the money. And that's when I said to Tony Robbins, oh, it's all right, I'll get you next year. You want a photo, Jim? It's like, no, it's all right, Tony. I've got to go and get the plane. I'll see you next year. That's like, work that one out.
God. Anyway, but yeah, in terms of obviously like health and things, just to wrap that up, is that we do maybe not all spend like the full attention to our physical and mental and emotional health and things, but you have to be aware that obviously sometimes your body can become overworked, so be careful of that. But there is times where you do need to push yourself in order to be successful, and successful people may neglect parts of their life in order to improve other parts of their life. But you can't always have that going on for longer periods of time, because sooner or later they will.
People like Musk.
Yeah.
Look at Elon Musk. I mean, you know, everybody goes, "Oh, it's hellish. He's the richest man in the world," and all the rest of it, and all that wealth. He doesn't deserve that. Elon Musk put everything on the line on that 4th rocket launch.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in the Netflix series or the Amazon series, where he actually the Elon Musk show, and literally he's on there live saying to his team, "This is our last shot. If this isn't a success, I am completely cleaned out."
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he couch surfers on everybody's sofas and he's at his pals' houses and he gets fed from them as well? He doesn't have two halfpennies to rub together.
It's all tied up in.
Yeah, it's all tied up in his companies. He's super wealthy, but he has no money. He has no income really, but he chooses to be like that because that's the life he wants to lead, because he believes that that will lead him to meteoric success, and his
Mm-hmm.
purpose is far greater for the human race than him himself. That's when the need of the many outweigh the few. That's a classic Star Trek Spock thing,
Mm-hmm.
where he says the need of the many actually outweigh the need of the one. And
Yeah.
effectively, I bet you that's what goes on in his head. But look at the price he pays. He put everything on the line to get that. And that was successful. NASA phones him up and says, "You got the contract for X billion dollars." But if that hadn't been successful, that would have been the end of his journey in that. He would have lost 300 million. Now, he got that money when he sold PayPal, remember?
Yeah.
And that's how he built that. So he built PayPal from his room, from his bedroom, and then he sold that, and then he put that money into here. So that never happened by chance. He had a hell of a lot of sacrifices. Look at his wife's. His wife doesn't have anything to do with him anymore, but she looks after the kids and she's her best friends with him still. But she just can't live with him because he's completely focused and completely like that. And I'll be honest, that's what Elaine was like with me sometimes. It's like, I can't live with you because you're just completely obsessed. You're completely obsessed with business. You're completely obsessed with growing wealth. You're completely obsessed with what you're doing. But I think obsessions are a healthy thing for somebody that wants to be successful.
Well, that just nicely brings us on to the last thing I want to talk about. And obviously, we're looking at the sacrifices, and we've done time and family and social life and your sleep and your health. And it brings me to your sanity. and is your sanity something that you sacrifice? And are there days when you feel maybe more stressed, or maybe you are tired and overworked than other people? And do you think that that's your sanity is sacrificed too much, or do you think it's
well, I would never say my sanity is sacrificed too much. There is occasions I've tested my sanity to the limits, and you know that. You know, I've literally stood with a noose around my neck, ready to jump off the actual chair. And I know that time was New Year's night, one year, and I actually went round to my pal's grave and I actually said, "You lucky bugger, you know, you managed to do it," because he actually did the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
And I actually said, "You know, you managed to do this. You know, how lucky are you? You've got out of this." I was envious of him, completely envious of him. He's dead, lying in the grave,
Which is a
and I'm
dark
like
place to be.
castigating him. Eh?
Which is quite a dark place to be.
Of course it is. And so when you say, you know, was there days that you tested your sanity? I think the answer to that is yes. I think the answer. I mean, that story. That's the first time I've told that story publicly, I think.
Yeah.
But literally, that's, you know, that is the ultimate test of your sanity. But you've got to remember, I genuinely believe that's what most huge entrepreneurs go through. They just don't tell that story to anyone. They keep it to themselves because of the stability. I've got no one to invest. I've got no investors. I've got no shareholders to appease to. Therefore, I can tell any story I want and it will not affect any of my income at all. Whereas Musk, Bezos, you know, all these different people, they can't tell these stories Because if you look, Musk looks unhinged at most of the points in his life, but if he talked about things like that in these dark times, possibly he might not actually get the investors he gets.
He would lose following.
Yeah. It wouldn't. He would gain following, but he'd maybe gain the wrong people.
Right.
The following he gains is not money; it's notoriety and fame, and he doesn't want notoriety and fame. That's a completely different thing. So if you're, it's me, the days where you feel stressed, tired, and overworked, yes, almost every single day. Every single day.
Yeah. And I suppose, and as the days when you feel that you question like what you're doing is really worth it all, even though you know it is, and I know it is, but do you question yourself and think, is this really all worth it? I'm doing all this.
There's days when I get crap from some people and I think, what the hell am I doing this for?
This?
Why am I sitting in somebody's house when they're saying, oh, I'm not really sure if I should go with you? I think the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go out to see someone to list their house, the answer is you should always be using me, because I'll guarantee you I'll get a result way beyond what everybody else can get. And if you can't see that, why the hell am I wasting my time here sitting here? Hence the reason why I don't really go out to that many people now. I go out to people that are more than likely, they're just getting me to come out and see them. I have not got my time to sit and tell people. In the past, what I did was I told them everything they should be doing in order to get everything ready, in order to get their life in order to get themselves set. And then they go, oh, I've put it on with someone else. Hold it. It's like, I've just sorted out everything for you for free. And the advice and information I've just given you is worth more than the fee I'm about to charge you. And yet you think it's like, I'm going to go with somebody else. So this is why I've not got time for some people anymore. It's like my time is very valuable to myself, and it's about monetizing my time now, because you've only got a certain amount of hours in the day, and about working on your business rather than in your business in the trenches, and actually teaching other people to do what you can do, and actually making true value of the time that you've got left. 76-year-old is the average lifespan.
Yeah.
I've actually got 20 years left. I've got 20 summers, 20 Christmases, 20 Easters, 20 birthdays. And if I'm on average, then that's me dead. That puts you in a perspective of where you should be spending your time. That's what clarifies your sanity. That's what really zones it in on where you should be. A lot of people, imagine, what would you be doing now if you thought by the end of the year you'd be dead? Would you be doing what you're doing now?
You'd be doing a lot of different things, yeah.
So why are you not doing it? You'll be handing your notice in after this.
No.
It's like, what am I doing here? It's like...
No, but I know when you put things in perspective like that, and it comes right back to time. And do you know what I mean? When you put things in perspective from a time point of view as well, that's what makes the reality sink in. But your sanity and things, and you'll get a lot over the years, and maybe still do, from like friends and family, Jim, that they'll call you crazy because you work so hard, and I know you work so hard. Do you get that a lot still? I know you got a lot.
Yeah, most people say, God, I don't know where you get the energy from. I don't know where you get the energy levels, and I think your energy levels come from the dream, come from what you really want to achieve, and the focus you've got, and the obsession you've got, and the determination you've got to achieve what you want to do. I think that's where the energy comes from within. You can't get it from anybody else. You can get motivated by watching this and listening to this. And some people run out and go, I'm going to make a phone call now. I'm going to do that deal now. But in 3 days' time, I'll guarantee you that's gone. That energy's gone. That's external motivation. You have to learn to internally motivate yourself. And that is really having your vision and having what you really want to achieve, putting it down to pounds, shillings, and pence, in terms of that, and quantifying it in some sort of way. I mean, if you don't hit it, you don't hit it. Just refocus and aim for it again. But if you don't go for it in the first place, then you've only got yourself to blame.
Yeah, I think it's really important that it's necessary to sacrifice and push yourself to be successful. Obviously, don't forget to take some sort of break and relax and time for yourself throughout that process. But know that obviously your temporary crazy moments when you're pushing yourself and trying to succeed, that they are just a step closer to achieving what you truly want.
So the key here is the one that I know now is I know my triggers.
Yeah.
So I know the things that are going. I know when the inevitable is coming, when I'm pushing myself too far, because I notice there's certain things about me that I notice are my triggers and patterns of behaviour that I know it's like, whoa, rein it back. So so there's your. I've talked about this before. There's the line right along there, the fictitious line is we're on right along. Okay.
Mhm.
And that line is probably the line of, you're kind of working very almost flat out. You're just under flat out. So that's the line you should be working all the time. Okay. And then every now and again, you knock out the park and you're up here and you work up here for a wee while. But remember to come back down.
Yeah.
But what I was doing is I was literally just up there all the time, all the way along, way beyond my threshold. Way beyond any human threshold, way beyond a mental threshold, way beyond a physical threshold. It was just never sustainable. But literally, I had done that for 30 years and just kept knocking out the park every single day, kept obsessing, kept working, kept going, and kept doing everything to get where I was. But then it's the price I had to pay. I'm not necessarily saying it's the price everybody else has got to pay. Because today, the things that I do in the beginning are so easy to do. You've got computerization, you've got emails which are acceptable now, you've got offers and acceptance.
You've got YouTube, you've got Google, you've got everything.
It's normality to get a buy-to-let mortgage. It's normality to get a mortgage broker to get over the line for you. None of that existed for me.
Yeah.
I had to work out that system for me in the very beginning myself. You've got contractors now ready to clean and turn around houses and refurbish houses. That never existed when I was there as well. Nobody did things like that. And everybody think, well, surely you just get a contractor to do it. No, because contractors worked on building sites and jobs. They didn't do things like, they didn't think about things like doing stuff like that. The only person I had was Mark Taylor. Mark was the one that started with me at the same time, and he was the one that did all my contract work after a period of time, because I thought, I can't do this anymore. It's like, this is crazy. I need somebody to come on board with me. And then Mark was one of the ones. But I project managed Mark as well. So Mark and I started at the very beginning together. So when I said I did all the houses myself, some of the houses I did choose to do myself because it was jobs that, Mark wouldn't want to do because he was doing other things elsewhere. So it was just jobs I had to pick up whether I liked it or no, because there was nobody else to do it. There's nobody else to trust to do it. That was a thing as well. It's like there was, somebody doesn't have the work ethic of you and the cleanliness of you, because I've tried before and you just thought, oh, God, I need to do it myself.
Yeah.
It's actually getting that right. Yourself, Richard. It's getting the right people to work in the right team.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own different motivations. And it's the whole thing about, it comes a point and somebody says, it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to quit. And it's like, oh, great. I was expecting you to, to help me with this or help me with that. And that's the type of things that happens. And you don't know what goes on in their mind and how they're going to deal with it. Therefore, that's another person let you down. And that's what you've got to learn as well. You'll get a lot of people that let you down. Just a fact of life. You're going to have to live with that. And that's difficult. That's difficult when you've got people on board and you trust them and you bring them on board and then they let you down big time. So that's another thing you've got to overcome, especially if you buy into them. I'm a great believer in I buy into people. They become part of my family. I'll do anything for anybody. Richard, if you were across the other side of the world and I had to travel across there to save your life, I'd be on a plane straight away going, no matter where it was or when it was. That's what I'd be doing. But some people wouldn't do that. Some people don't want to pay that price to do it. But that's how I buy into people. I would do that for anybody I know as part of my team. Whether they would do that for me is a different story.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, you need and to build the right team. It's difficult to build the right team. But when you find the right people, So.
Alan Dawson made a great point. Alan's no longer here as well. He died of a stroke at 55-year-old. Just got up one night and that was it, dead. And it's like, holy shit. And it's like, how did that happen? But he said a really profound statement to me, and well, it's profound to me. He says, you know your real friends, and you know your real friends because it's if you could phone that person up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and if you're stuck somewhere, and they'll get in a car and actually go over to get you, that's probably when you know who your real friends are.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I think you're probably right. And to be honest, you could probably count these people on less than one hand, on your one hand. Because while you think like that, not everybody else thinks like that. And there is people out there I've not met yet. It will be like that, and I'll eventually meet them, and they'll be part of my team. And the same with you as well, Richard. And the same with everybody out there as well. There'll be people like that. So a stranger is just a friend you've not. No, a friend is just a stranger you've not met yet.
Yeah.
You know, sort of along that line. So I definitely think that's where we are right now. But worth the sacrifice, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, making sacrifices for success and things, and any aspect to what you're doing is inevitable. But always be careful, like we've just spoke about, not to lose things that matter and do make you happy along the way. And hopefully everything that we've covered today, if people are going through a tough time and maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed with everything that they're maybe sacrificing, then hopefully what we've discussed today and what Jim's shared about his journey will reassure you that inevitably it is part of the process, and you're on the right path. But just keep an eye on the red flags that show that you've crossed the line. Like you were saying, you know your triggers and things.
In hindsight, I would say, you know, if you are in that frame of mind and if you're thinking this isn't worth it living anymore, then definitely speak to the doctor. I'm no caring, you know, the drugs will help. I don't care what anybody says because they have no bloody clue what they're talking about. Things like citalopram and antidepressants are actually really good. They're not to zone you out. They're actually suppressants for serotonin. So the serotonin suppressants, and you need serotonin every single day for you to feel happy. That's the happy drug. It sits in your head and it forms in your gut. And because the depletion of serotonin, and you end up basically burning yourself out, you don't have that in your mind anymore. Therefore, it all gets dark and dingy. You have to plug these gaps, and that's what these suppressants are. They actually slow down the depletion of serotonin. They don't build it up; they just slow it down, the depletion of it, and therefore you're able to build up a certain amount, and you're able to feel more comfortable, more relaxed within your own environment. And that's what antidepressants are for. They're neural inhibitors for serotonin, to slow down the depletion. So you should always seek medical help if you get to that stage, or speak to someone. God, speak to me.
Yeah, definitely. Even just speaking to somebody always helps. Sacrifices, like we say, are necessary, but you don't want to wake up one day and find out that the sacrifices that you've made for your success and things have come at a cost of your happiness.
I know it sounds dark, but you know, when I was saying to you, Richard, about the fact that I'd be prepared to die for my dream, it's like, you know, that literally is, you know, I would be, but I would honestly say to people, it's like, don't get to that stage.
Don't wake up and feel like
it should be that should be a metaphor rather than a reality. I would say, that should be a metaphor rather than a reality.
They shouldn't come with the cost of your happiness and your health and your peace of mind.
You know, it's easy to message me on social media anyway. There's a lot of people message me in the past on social media. I've pointed them in the right direction. I've given them the right reading material, and had a wee chat with them as well. And they're all dandy and they're all fine and back on track again. I completely get them, you see, because I've been there before. So I completely understand how they're feeling, whereas other people have no idea, have not gone through this. They just think it's about, just you know, buck up and keep going. It's like, no, that's not the thing you should be doing. That just kind of makes it worse. This is when the time is to take your time out and sharpen your axe. You should actually go back and actually just go, no, you need to rest. The war, what is it? The battle has been lost, but the war hasn't been. The war can still be won.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So that's the key here. So the battle could be lost on that occasion, but the war will still be won overall. So it'll just take a bit more time to do it. So don't worry about it. Your journey, you'll still get there. You just have to refocus. You just have to take time, relax, step back, get yourself sorted, and then go again.
Recalibrate, basically. Yeah. Good. Well, that was me for today, and thanks for obviously sharing your journey, Jim, and all your insights and things. And thanks to everybody watching. I've got Perry and Pete and things watching at this end, and I believe you're going to do some questions on TikTok when we.
Well, I don't need to do it on here. I'll just answer them at the end of the TikTok brigade, and that'll do. Okay.
So thanks everybody for joining in. Okay.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.